Yeah, yeah, that's what happens.
No
Ryan,
rebuttal on that one. No rebuttal.
speaking of another guy who won't play in the SEC, but his team will eventually, Ja'Tavion Sanders
Yes.
from Texas.
Yes.
I don't know why I thought I was expecting a little bit more. I'm not trying
That's fair.
to be negative on Ja'Tavion Sanders. I thought that he was a fine football player. I can
Yes.
see the possibility for him to rise throughout this process. What background do you have on him? Because I know you had kind of talked about how you were a fan of him before he popped off last year.
Yeah. I actually recommended him to an agent like early part of last year, which isn't a big recommendation because went to Denton Ryan High School in the state of Texas, was a 5-star recruit. So it's not like I found Ja'Tavion Sanders. Everybody knows who Ja'Tavion Sanders was. He was
Is it Ja'Tavion or Ja'Tavion?
Ja'Tavion? I don't know, man. We're going to find out at some point this cycle. We're going to find out at some point. So he's a physical culture and sports major, whatever that means. 5-star recruits. He was recruited as an athlete. So there were some colleges that liked him on the offensive side of the football, like Texas for one. There were other schools that liked him on the defensive side of the football as a defensive end. But regardless, high caliber player. Last year, I believe, I'm trying to look at the notes real quick on him. Yes, 20 tackles for loss, 11 sacks. Actually, that was as a junior. So he was a very dominant defensive player. Also, Joe, his last year, he pulled in 63 receptions for over 1,100 yards and 16 touchdowns in high school, which is just absolutely absurd, man. Absolutely absurd. So this is a dual sport athlete. Also played basketball, I believe, for the high school, was a multi-sport athlete. Chose Texas, obviously, to stay in the state. I mean, this has been one of those kids that we've known about for years and years and years. 5-star. The question always was about Sanders was, where is he going to end up? On the offensive side of the football, defensive side of the football. Obviously, Texas was very adamant for him to play on the offensive side of football. Played a little bit as a freshman, but really showed out as a sophomore. Was an all Big 12 selection, over 54 receptions for over 600 yards, 613 yards, and 5 touchdowns as a true sophomore. So 6'4", 241 pounds. He has the namesake to him, which I think is part of why maybe he underwhelmed you slightly, is the fact that he is a big name, 5-star type of kid.
Well, part of the reason why he underwhelmed me too is I worked in an office with 3 Texas guys, and all they would talk about is, what do you think of Ja'Tavion Sanders? Have you watched Ja'Tavion Sanders? How have you not evaluated Ja'Tavion Sanders? Like, they used to give me crap that I didn't have like a grade on this kid. I'm like, dude, he's the class ahead of the one we're on right now. I'm not going to evaluate him until we get there.
Right.
Right. I can see him maybe improving. I can see the ceiling. I don't know if he's like a first round pick eventually. I don't know if that's in his capability of progression. I see that he's a great linear athlete. I think he moves up the field really well. He accelerates well. He is somebody who I think is going to attack defenses well up the seam, up the middle of the field, because he moves well in a straight line. Asking him to change direction for me was a little sketchy. It was a little bit underwhelming. I don't know how much I can actually ask him to make cuts, run difficult routes that are going to ask him to cut back to the football. Those things weren't on tape for me. The other aspect of it, and I was saying this is also, we were kind of going on this pre-show discussion on blocking. I am a sucker for physicality at any position. If you listen to me talk about any of these guys, the guys that I prop up are the ones that are physical, but maybe don't put everything together just yet. I can find a way for a guy to work that's physical. Ja'Tavion Sanders.
Why did you like Kalijah Kancey then if you like physicality?
Shut up. Ja'Tavion Sanders had no effort as a blocker, no aggression as a blocker, no will to move guys, hit anybody. I don't see any impact or any capability to be an impactful blocker. So that means I'm drafting a guy that is just a deep threat, that is going to beat you up the middle of the field, and I don't know if I can get anything else out of him. That's where my pause is.
I'm going to say a name, Joe. This is a comp. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Ja'Tavion Sanders reminds me a whole lot of Eric Ebron.
I can see that.
For the good and for the bad. Because the good, like you said, very athletic as far as explosive. He gets to his top speed very quickly. He can get on top of dudes. He is if you're asking linebackers to run with Ja'Tavion Sanders, it's going to be a long day. And the one other thing that I think he brings to the table that I didn't hear you mention, if you did, I'm sorry, my ADHD may have kicked in at one point during this podcast.
As it always does.
Yes, it does. Sanders has some of the best hands that I have seen of a tight end over the last couple of years. Kid plucks the football. Very strong.
But it's see, like I wrote that down, and then there were a couple plays on film where I felt like he could have made catches that he didn't. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I was nitpicking. I said he had good hands. I didn't think that it was if I was ready to put it in the elite category, but I can see that it being a positive.
I think he's got really strong hands, man. I think that he plucks the football effortlessly. I also really like him after the catch. He's not the wiggle guy after the catch to make people miss, but he can break some tackles, and he's explosive, and he can create some stuff just running easy slide routes or delay routes. Like, he can make some stuff happen after the catch. So after the catch, linear, and he's got really strong hands. Really nice profile, I think. I mean, he's going to be a very vertically oriented tight end at the next level, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because I agree. He's a little tight, because I don't think he's a naturally big guy. I think he's pumped up a little bit right now. I think he's holding 240 plus pounds, and it's not the most natural 240 pounds of all time. Like Brock Bowers right now, and I know that we're talking about one guy that's 240, one guy that's 230, but Brock Bowers, like, he's not bulked, right? Like, he's not hulked up anywhere. Ja'Tavion Sanders, I feel like Texas put a bunch of weight on him, because they're like, you need to be able to play in line a little bit in this offense. Yeah. And I just don't think that that is naturally what his body should look like, because you are correct. And I texted you about this. The TCU game, I think, is a perfect illustration. He is not a blocker. He's not.
And he never will.
Probably not. He gets in the right spot at times. He can be a positional blocker at points, but he just does not have the desire or the physicality to be a plus blocker at the next level. He doesn't. I mean, there were a couple of reps against TCU, the one that I posted on Twitter especially, where, man, like, it's just, for a guy that is that well put together, doesn't bring a massive power profile as a blocker, which is just a little bit odd. So I think that he is a one-dimensional football player. I think he's a little bit limited as far as the route tree he's going to run. But I do think if you use him correctly, like Eric Ebron was used at points in his NFL career, he could be a productive football player. He could be a good football player. It's just there are some inconsistencies that are deficiencies to his game he isn't transcendent. He's not scheme transcendent. No matter what team you drop Ja'Tavion Sanders in, it's not like they could just be like, yep, he could fit us. Like, no, there's going to be some teams that he fits perfectly. There's going to be other teams that he does not fit at all. And that's just the reality that we're in.
So before we have to wrap right now, but before we do, you're comparing him to Eric Ebron. Do you think he ever gets to that point where he can, if you say he explodes this year and he's super productive, is he a guy who is can be a top, let's say top 20 pick? Do you think he ever reaches that? Because I don't know if I think he's maybe back end of the first round is what I'm willing to toss out there.
I think he's a day 2 football player, but if you told me that he had just like this crazy season where he's like almost at 1,000 yards or at 1,000 yards and he's on a good Texas team, could the NFL value him in the first round? It's possible. It's possible. And I think that again, if the team can utilize him correctly, I think that there is some merit to saying like, yeah, we can make that work. We can make that happen. But ultimately for me, I think he's a day 2 football player. Like, I like him, but he is a little bit scheme specific to me. I think that he can be successful, but it is not in a lot of different outcomes. He has to be in the right situation for me.
Yeah, I graded him as a top 100 player. So I'm a little bit softer on him. But I, again, can see the progression. Maybe explodes, moves his way into the first round. It's certainly possible because his ceiling is pretty good because of his athleticism. At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft. Hit subscribe. We'll be back with more. Enjoy the rest of your week. I just want to tell you folks about an exciting new partnership that we have with this channel with Underdog Fantasy. Ever since I joined, I've been having so much fun. There are so many different exciting games that make watching games during the offseason more exciting. I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but it has made it way more entertaining since I found Underdog Fantasy. And my favorite game to play so far, which I think you should try out, is Pick'em. It is so easy to play. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite player stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em slip, get every pick right, and take home some cold hard cash. Use code HACK, H-A-C-K, HACK, like the name of this channel. Use code HACK to get your first deposit doubled up to $100 by Underdog. Go sign up. You won't regret it. You're going to have a blast. Check out Underdog Fantasy. I also want to tell you folks about our other recurring sponsor that we have on this channel, that being BetOnline, betonline.ag, which has all the updated odds, news, and anything for sports betting. It's my go-to source for when I want to be betting specifically on games. I love betting on college basketball or the NBA, especially, again, during the offseason. Always looking for more fun ways to be focused in on some of these other sports. It's betonline.ag and use promo code BELIEVE50. It's promo code BELIEVE50 to get 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.